In the wake of the Second World War, the international coalition that brought Hitler's Third Reich to its knees also initiated a societal campaign to, quote, denazify Europe. Now, we all know, unfortunately, the roots of anti-Semitism, the world's longest hatred, goes deep enough that we're still seeing a rise in it again. But there was such a successful overturning of the ideology that supported the Nazi solution to what they called the Jewish problem that in the last week, the International Court of Justice has held Israel on trial on charges of genocide in the country that was the origin of the Nazi campaign and Nazi solution, and the Holocaust actually defended Israel. So one of the questions facing us now for the day after Israel's war in Gaza is, can you, quote, denazify a society that is at its core violently anti-Semitic? So we're going to discuss all of this and more with IDF retired Lieutenant Colonel Marco Moreno in today's episode of the Moreno Report. Marco, it has been such a, I don't even know how to describe this week. I was talking to somebody over the weekend and she said, you know, if you had told me 10 years ago, even a year ago, that we were going to wake up one day and South Africa was going to bring Israel into international court on charges of apartheid and genocide, and that Germany would step in to defend Israel's integrity, we would have laughed. How did we find ourselves in this situation?
We live in a season of everything is so weird, and like if I told you, I don't know, in the beginning of September before Rosh Hashanah, that in October 7, 3,000 Nukhba, like Hamas terrorists will occupy the south of Israel, so you probably would laugh. So we know this is a hypocrite world when it comes to Israel, when it comes to antisemitism. Now, South Africa is prosecuting Israel for genocide because Iran asked them to do it. And look upon the result. We have a judge from Lebanon, China, Russia, countries that are well known for human rights.
Of course.
Or judging against. I have to say, when I heard that this thing of Hague is up and running, I couldn't not remember that in 2020, the Trump administration issued a presidential warrant against this court because they were judging the U.S. in Afghanistan.
Against the ICJ?
No, against the U.S. Army.
Right. Yeah.
Against the U.S. Army. His action in Afghanistan, they wanted to inquire that. And Trump said to the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, I think it was Mike Pompeo, they can do that, but I want you to cancel all their visas for them and their families. And they just went back to the rooms shaking and said, no, we're not going to proceed. So that's
see here.
You see, nothing to do with justice, nothing to do, it's all politics. It's anti-Semitism. To prosecute Israel for genocide, it's crazy. If folks back home are monitoring what's the IDF action in Gaza, none army in the world ever had to deal with this kind of a war, that you have this small place with 2.5 million people. 2.5 million. Now, the Palestinians are saying they have like 26,000 people dead. Let's assume they're not lying.
Okay.
Which, we know they are very honest people. And 26,000 people died. Army says half of them are Hamas terrorists. And you have 2.5 million. So now there is casualties. There is civilians that are getting injured or dying during this war, but the army is doing as much as it can to, evacuate the population. There's a massive activities in the army, the special division of just moving the population from here to there. And we are providing, in a way, Hamas humanitarian aid. Because Israel is allowing 160 full trailer trucks every day with humanitarian supply, which we know that Hamas is taking like 60-70% of them.
At least, yeah.
And we're like, in a way, we are sustaining his existence because we give him fuel and food so he can stay in the tunnels. But we are doing it because that's the international law. Now, the legal division in the army is working day and night alongside the army to see that all our action is according to the international law. It's an hypocrite war. The South Africa, we're very known for human rights. Again, is prosecuting Israel, but the result of what we had in Hague, this performance in Hague, was nothing. There was a concern that they will issue a warrant to stop the war immediately, which didn't happen.
They had 6. I wrote them down. 6 rulings. Number 1, they ordered Israel to, quote, take all measures within your power to prevent the commission of all acts within the scope of how the UN would define genocide.
Yeah.
Now, I want to read a tweet from the chair of urban warfare at West Point. So if you're an American, you know West Point is our most highly esteemed military academy. If you're outside of the States, just so you know. His name's John Spencer. He said on January 30th, he said, in my opinion, Israel has implemented more measure to prevent civilian casualties in urban warfare than any other military in the history of war. Israel has implemented more measures to prevent civilian casualties in urban warfare than any other military in the history of war. So I wanted to ask you, because you spent 25 years in the IDF. We got to know you. We've met you through a humanitarian project in Syria. So I've become personally familiar with the ethics of the IDF. But at the start of the war, there was this big brouhaha about proportionality. Everybody was saying, Israel, you have to respond proportionally. And I thought it was so ridiculous, because if the answer was, of course, you were not going to respond proportionally, because you're not going to raid villages. You're not going to rape women, behead children, just loot the homes. So the measure of restraint that the IDF has exhibited in this war in particular, because I know that there's a lot of, I have a lot of friends who were like, I had sympathy for the Palestinians before, but after October 7th, I'm hurting quite a bit. So what has this been like, as a former leader in the army, your friends, your family? When you gather around the table, how are Israelis feeling right now?
Well, Israelis, after October 7, let's take even the most left radical wing in Israel, they all said, let's kill them all. I don't know if folks back home know, but the southern part of Israel, like all the kibbutzim and the places that were occupied, they're very left radical. Now, those guys were like the tip of the spirit for now peace and now a two-state solution, and we need to help the Palestinians. Some of the ladies that were kidnapped were actually ladies that were evacuating Palestinian patients from Gaza to hospitals all day long. And that was kind of a wake-up call for them and for all Israelis that what are the true incentive of the Palestinians in Gaza against us. But having heard what you just mentioned, I cannot ignore the double standard that we are used to it in Israel. Double standard. Give me a couple of examples. I still remember that the U.S. Army, and I'm not saying it for like a complaint or something, but I think it's good. I remember that the U.S. Army, in order to kill one of Al-Qaeda leaders after 9/11, had an intel that he is participating in a wedding. He went to a wedding. So
somewhere in the Middle East.
No, somewhere in Afghanistan. And the American army shot the missile into the wedding in order to kill him. But he killed on the way like 500 people. and no one had nothing to say about it.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah? You guys can check it out. But that's how you do it. Imagine if Israel would do it.
Right.
So double standard. Russia.
Hmm.
Like, look what they're doing in the Ukraine. They are killing civilians. The Israeli army is not shooting on civilians in purpose. It's telling them, guys, there is a map. I don't know if you see it, with the QR even. And it's all it can be high-tech or low-tech, depends who use it. And then, neighborhood 17, 18, we're going to attack, so evacuate. Even we are notifying the Hamas where we are coming in. And we're giving them, according to the international law, time to evacuate. And after that, we start attacking. So if civilians stay there, so what we can do? Now, I know there is an argument that Hamas is not allowing the civilians to get out from places because they are a kind of a human shield. And the army is dealing with that also. So even though the guts for the Israelis were, it's killed them all. And after October 7, I hope one day the famous movie about what happened in October 7 from the GoPro camera from the Hamas guys that the army is showing for leaders.
Like a 47-minute video.
Yeah, so 47 minutes. We'll broadcast to the world. It's just honoring the families that were there. They were not doing it. And believe me, everyone will sit home. We will say we have to kill them all. Because those guys came in the morning in order to butcher, to rape, to beheaded. And it was a mini Holocaust.
Yeah, I mean, devastating. And I have a neighbor who participated in a women's march a day or two before October 7th with women from the West Bank, women from Gaza. And one of the keynote leaders of that march was, I've forgotten her surname, but her name's Vivian. She was in Kibbutz Be'eri and was killed. And so it will take, you've said this before, I've heard you say this several times, it will take months for Israel to, when you're dealing with this kind of grief and trauma and adrenaline through the war, and now we've crossed the 4-month mark. Like, the adrenaline is gone. It's just, we're just doing what needs to be done now. But to come out on the other side of it and examine who you are now as a country, this has been a really transformative, for better or worse, just an awful experience that you will always remember Israel before October 7th and Israel after October 7th.
Even if we will forget Israel after October 7th, it looks like the Jordanians are reminding us opening restaurants and supermarkets named October 7th. So thank you for that.
You have a peace deal with Jordan.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting neighborhood that you live in. And I want to be clear that we're, in terms of ethics and values, just for the audience and any like anti-Zionist troll that might find us in the comments section, I'm not, all war is hell. Full stop. Every civilian death is a tragedy. Every death is a tragedy. It's in scripture that the Lord does not delight in the death of the wicked. So on no level are we like, we're not cheering on the IDF to go get them and take down Palestinians, which is how this narrative gets spun so often, that if you on any level support Israel, you must be a genocidal maniac, which is how Israel found themselves in the International Court of Justice facing genocide charges. And even the ICJ said, well, it's not genocide, but we still don't think we like what's going on, so we're going to keep an eye on it. We'll reconvene in a few months. But in the end, the rulings that the ICJ gave Israel essentially mean keep doing what you're doing. And, we come to the end of the war. But the other story that broke as the ICJ rulings come, and I think deliberately it was reported, well, the UN owned up to it. There have been rumors, right? And this goes along with what you were saying, that you hear that Hamas tells Gazan civilians, don't go anywhere. We want you to be our human shields. And you'd think, how in the world, who could possibly do that to a grandma? But last week, the IDF rescued an elderly woman that had been tied to her chair so that she could be a civilian death. And, the IDF killed her. So, Hillel Noor is the director of an organization called UN Watch, and they've been reporting for years that the UN, specifically UNRWA, there are 2 refugee agencies in the United Nations, one for Palestinians and one for every other refugee from everywhere else, anywhere else. And so UNRWA has been this quagmire of ethical contradictions since 1948. And the UN was faced with irrefutable evidence that they have, I think the number that I heard last night as I was researching for this episode was 1,200 Hamas members on UN payroll, on UNRWA payroll, who participated in October 7th.
Not
Some of
1,200,
them,
12.
well, 12, but then the number was
Not 1,200,
Claiming.
yeah, but 12.
the initial report had
Yeah.
12 specifically named.
There is more, not 1,200.
Yeah. But one of those men who was on record in this initial 12 that were reported said, he's on record saying they traced down proof of him discouraging Gazan civilians. Another one was, we all, unfortunately, if you saw any of the footage coming out on October 7th, we all saw the body of a German-Israeli named Shani Luke being hauled in the back of a pickup truck with 4 armed men in the back of the pickup truck, shooting their guns, hollering, cheering because they had denigrated this woman. One of those men is a teacher at an UNRWA school. How frustrating is this?
First of all, UNRWA, it's a UN refugee for the Palestinians organization based in Amman in Jordan. That's the headquarters. Their job is to take care of for Palestinian refugees in Gaza, West Bank, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. But they are mainly concentrated on Gaza and mainly Gaza, also the West Bank. Their budget is something near $2 billion a year, which is mostly donations from countries, the US and other European countries. And it's a money pit for corruption and doing everything except of helping refugees. On top of that, and this is a claim that Israel has for years, that UNRWA in Gaza is actually Hamas. Just Hamas people on the payroll. They get a paycheck from Hamas and they get a paycheck from UNRWA. Now, if you guys are monitoring what's going on in Gaza, like every UNRWA school, every UNRWA facility, it's like a Hamas headquarters. It's weapons, it's missiles, it's explosives, it's everything, just everything. And Israel gave proof that at least 12 participated in October 7 was UNRWA employees. Now, honestly, I don't know. Let's say we can live in a imaginational world and let's cancel UNRWA. Still, we have a problem. Not us, but the world has a problem with the refugees. I think that's a bigger issue that probably we'll have to do a separate report about the UN and their role in this world and what they're doing. I cannot, again, I'm just emotional today. Cannot forget how the secretary of the UN, what's his name? Remember his name, the Portugal guy, just said after October 7, when he gave a speech, he said, well, Hamas didn't act in a vacuum.
So Israel deserves this.
Yeah, like it wasn't in a vacuum because Israel is aggressive, and then he took his word back after a couple of weeks. But that's the UN and UNRWA. It's part of the UN. I really hope, I'm encouraging, I know you don't like politics, but I'm encouraging my Americans, brothers and sisters, vote for the right president in November 2024. I remember a president, maybe you heard about him, his name is Donald J. Trump, that was very clear about the UN and its role and the corruption and the budget, and it's just that.
I remember Nikki Haley stepping down as well as from ambassador to it, which was a pivotal moment. When I was driving in here to meet Marco, right across from our office, there's a little mini market, and there was a UN truck getting, somebody stopping for bread at the mini market. And I thought, I should, I have a lot of questions for and about the UN, but I wanted to show you I wasn't making it up. The New York Post, this is from 13 hours ago, 1,200 UNRWA staffers, or 10% of UNRWA paid employees in Gaza have links to Hamas, with thousands more closely related to terrorists.
Yeah. I thought you said that 1,200 that participated in October 7. Yeah.
Oh, I probably did.
No, UNRWA, it's Hamas. It's
Yeah.
Hamas branch.
So as the photos, videos of the tunnels that are being discovered in Gaza are leaking, you can see like UN sandbags are part of it. So as you said, 160 plus trucks go in every day.
Took the money, the 2 billion I'm talking about budget, that I don't know how much of it, like $1 billion arrived to Gaza every year to, for schools, for infrastructure, and they build tunnels. That's it. They use that money instead of building a school or a clinic, to just build a terror tunnel.
Yeah. One of the kind of buzzword phrases describing Gaza, especially at the start of the war, well, there was a weird little juxtaposition. People would call it an open air prison, or people would, post a video of the beach or something and accuse, it was like Gaza before the war and Gaza after the war, and look at how the IDF is destroying it. So is it an open air prison, or is it this like paradise? But I would say, I do believe it's an open air prison, but I believe that Hamas, Hamas is ideologically, fundamentally, it's the same thing as the Islamic State. So what the Islamic State did in Mosul, throughout the territory that they took, but particularly in Mosul in the 9 months, we talked last time about how long it took for the international coalition to bring ISIS to its knees, destroy it, and recapture Mosul. Hamas is doing the same thing to Gaza. So that it is an open air prison, but Hamas holds the keys. And the best way to free Palestine, if we're starting with Gaza, is to get rid of Hamas yesterday. So as you were speaking about the money, I just wanted to kind of run some numbers. The UNRWA is funded by hundreds of millions of dollars by state donations. Final donor numbers for last year have not yet been published, but we have the 2022 numbers. So just as some examples here, the United States gives UNRWA specifically $344 million. They get $202 million from Germany, $114 from the European Commission, the EU, $61 million from Sweden, $34 million from Norway, $29 million from France, $25 million from Switzerland, $24 million from Canada, $21 million from the UK, $21 million from the Netherlands. Every single one of these donors has suspended all funding to UNRWA in light of the evidence. Because again, I remember in 2014 during Operation Protective Edge, seeing 3 to 4 reports of UNRWA schools that were found with weapon stashes in the back. So this has been like an open secret for years.
Yeah, if you're looking for a good job, go work with UNRWA.
Yeah, you'd have to pass the Hamas test first.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you one more question related to this, but a little different. The spokesperson for the Palestinian Authority, sometime within the last week, published a video saying that or maybe it was an interview, they said, we are waiting until the end of the war. Let me just pause and give some context. I think we might have brought this up last time, but in the last couple of months, there was a poll, and you had X amount of support in Gaza for Hamas, but yet upwards of 90% of Palestinians in the West Bank support Hamas. So, everybody has said if there were elections, Hamas would win. And we don't want Hamas to govern the West Bank. They would destroy it in the same way they've destroyed Gaza. So the Palestinian Authority, the PA, last week, who I'll let you kind of paint the context for how the West Bank works right now. But he said, we're waiting until the end of the war, and then we'll hold elections. And if Hamas wins, then we're prepared to hand over. There will be a peaceful transition of power. So
he's trying to put some pressure on the Israeli government. But what this guy doesn't understand, I think the rest of the world changed. Israel realized that if you want to take back the Oslo process, started all the Palestinian thing
in the 90s.
In the 90s was a strategic mistake. Because what Israel did, they took a terror organization, Fatah, that we fought with him in Lebanon in 82. Yasser Arafat, we kicked him out from Lebanon and exiled him to Libya. And then we gave him like the red carpet to go back into the West Bank. We call it the Palestinian Authority. So,
was it like keep your friends close, put your enemies closer?
It was the difference between left and right. It was the dreamers versus the realistic. We had a dream, Shimon Peres, the new Middle East. Let's give them it's all. October 7 changed everything. We know it's all BS. You cannot do nothing. Like we said, the guys that we give them money, they live in, they have good life. They will be happy. They don't care because it's a fundamentalistic, jihadi, Islamic agenda, which they don't care about nothing except of killing the Jews and the Christians. It's very simple. The thing is that we have to realize it. Some of us are still living in a dream that maybe if we will help them and maybe if we will have a good life. No. What's happened now in the West Bank, by the way, in terms of security, that Israel is every day is going into the refugees camp, arresting the terrorists, killing some of them, and trying to implement security in the West Bank. Make no mistake, if in the West Bank they could have done October 7th, they will do it tomorrow. The only difference is that they don't have the capability because the army is very strong. It's going in, going out, going in, going out. Like imagine now if Israel will withdraw to what we call the line of 67
out of the West Bank,
and they will have their own authority. It's just a matter of time that we have October 7 in Kfar Saba, Ra'anana, and all the Highway 6. You have the Palestinian Authority here and Israel here. It will happen. That's the only reason it doesn't happen, because they don't have the military capability to do it, because the army is on top of them, and everyone in that is making something. But there will be tunnels, they will have missiles if we'll give them the opportunity, and that's the mistake. That's also the mistake that people are talking on the day after in Gaza. Who will rule it? If we will take the Palestinian Authority into Gaza, what do you think will happen? It will be the same. So in the day after, and we're going to do a Moreno report on the day after in Gaza, how it would look like, because it's a heavy thing. One of the basic things that will happen, that Israel will have a security control on Gaza, no matter what, no matter who is it, UNRWA, never mind. Security control, because if not, October 7th will happen again.
There was an operation last night, IDF operation last night in Jenin.
Yeah, in the hospital.
Tell us about that.
I'm encouraging, maybe we can send the link. I'm encouraging the guys to say it's like a nice episode of Fauda. Like the Israeli Fauda guys just went into the hospital and killed 3 Hamas guys. They were all dressed like patients, and it's nice to watch. But it happened every night.
Yeah, I watched it like 10 times. I was like, I don't know what I'm seeing right now.
It's like Fauda, but it's reality.
Yeah.
But it's reality.
Fauda is on Netflix, and it's the kind of show you either have to binge watch, or like I can't pace it out, but then if I binge watch it, my heart rate goes up through the roof. So, buyer beware.
By the way, one of the Fauda stars, Idan Amedi, which is a very famous singer in Israel, was badly injured in Gaza. He was in the reserve 3 months. And all the international media was on that because of Fauda. They don't know him, but it's because of Fauda.
Yeah, he only last week, I think, got discharged from the hospital.
Yeah.
He was in
when they poured the liquid into the tunnel and it exploded.
Yeah, and it went off too soon.
6 soldiers died and like 30 injured. Yeah. It was a military mistake, which happens.
Yeah. Again.
Okay, watch Fauda, guys. That's the message if you didn't get it.
That is, yeah. So, I want to just conclude and reiterate, FAI's baseline value, the foundation of who we are and what we do, is to exalt the worth of Jesus among the unreached and unengaged at the end of the age. So my heart prayer, and this, I think this is the best way to one of the keys to maybe how to pray right now, a prayer point would be, I'm stumbling over words because I don't want to tell you how to pray. I'm just saying the issue with, I'll say it this way. If you were to take anti-Semitism out of the Middle East, there would actually be peace in the Middle East. So, as Marco was saying, there's this violent, bloodthirsty, genocidal anti-Semitism rooted into the fabric of Palestinian society. It brings me no joy to say this, but the writing's been on the wall for years, and especially since October 7th. So are there innocent Gazans? Of course. There are Gazans who are protesting against Hamas in the streets within the last few days. It's one of the bravest things that they could do. And it's a sign that Hamas is losing power in Gaza, that they have the freedom to go out and chant publicly that we want to get rid of Hamas, and they're not getting shot down by snipers. So I'm encouraged to see that. But I believe the thing that will transform Gazan society and radical Islam, if you will, is the gospel of the kingdom. And the gospel of the kingdom is the gospel of the kingdom soon to be restored to Israel. So our ambition is to, I said in the last episode, we want to be a good brother to Israel. We want to stand with and serve Israel. And this is a moment in history where there's no, one of the most obscene things that I saw coming out of, on social media or something. It's like anybody who was showing any kind of support for Israel had to say, well, there's two sides to every story. This is it was a massacre. And we are unqualified in our support and solidarity for Israel right now as a nation, as a people. We're with you. And our prayers and our focus is that the Lord would open, as Paul put it in Thessalonians, that the Lord would open a door for the gospel to go forth in Gaza, whether that's however he wants to do that. That is our prayer. And in the meantime, we are privileged to be here. Marco, we love you. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
And next week, we'll have a new Moreno report. We are planning an episode dedicated to the hostage crisis, and God willing, by the time we film that next week, we would love to have a happy episode with the release of the hostages. So,
amen.